Can I ask you a difficult question? What if the hardest part about leaving your marriage isn't actually leaving? What if the hardest part is knowing whether it's time? Because if you've been questioning your marriage for months or maybe years, you've probably had thoughts like these. Maybe things will get better. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe this is just what marriage looks like after 20 years. Maybe I should give it one more chance. Maybe I should wait until the kids are older. Maybe I should be grateful for what I have. If that's where you are, I want you to know something. You're not weak, you're not dramatic, you're not selfish, and you're certainly not alone. The people who stay in unhappy marriages the longest are rarely the people who don't care. They're often the people who care the most. They've tried, they've forgiven, they've adjusted, they've explained, they've waited, and they've hoped. And after years of doing all that, it can become incredibly difficult to tell the difference between staying because there is still something healthy to rebuild and staying because fear has quietly taken over the decision. Today, I want to walk you through 7 reasons people may stay longer than they truly want to. Not because I think you should leave, and not because I think you should stay. Only you can make that decision. My hope is that this video helps you understand why the decision may feel so hard, so you can begin moving toward clarity instead of staying frozen in confusion. Before we go any further, I want to be clear about my role. I'm not a therapist. I'm not an attorney. I'm not here to diagnose your relationship or give you legal, therapeutic, or safety guidance. I'm a divorce mortgage specialist, and over the years, I've had the privilege of speaking with hundreds of people during one of the most difficult and biggest financial and emotional transitions of their lives. My expertise is the financial and housing side of divorce. But what I've learned is that the financial questions almost always begin with emotional ones. People rarely start by asking only, can I qualify for the mortgage? Most often, underneath that question, they're really asking, can I survive this? Will I be okay? Am I making the right decision? So today we're going to talk about the emotional side of feeling stuck, while also honoring that real decisions require real information. And if you're in a situation involving abuse, coercive control, threats, or danger, please seek help from a qualified professional or local support resource. That is beyond the scope of this video, and your safety matters first. One idea from psychology that helps explain why this decision can feel so hard is called loss aversion. In simple terms, people tend to feel the pain of losing something more intensely than the possibility of gaining something new. So even when something is painful, familiar pain can feel safer than an unknown future. That doesn't mean staying is wrong. It doesn't mean leaving is right. It simply means your brain may be trying to protect you from loss, even if the thing you're protecting is also hurting you. That is why fear should never be the only voice in the room. So let's walk through the 7 reasons. Reason 1, you may be staying because you're in love with the potential instead of reality. Hope is a beautiful thing. Hope is what allows people to forgive. Hope is what gets couples into counseling. Hope is what keeps families together through difficult seasons. I never want to make hope sound foolish because hope can be deeply meaningful. But there is a difference between hope that is supported by evidence and hope that is supported only by possibility. There's a difference between someone who is actively changing and someone who occasionally gives you enough to keep you waiting. This is where many people get stuck. They aren't staying in the marriage as it actually is today. They're staying in the marriage they believe it could become. They're staying for the version of their spouse they see once in a while, the apology, the good weekend, the temporary closeness, the promise that this time will be different. And sometimes change is real. People do grow. Relationships do heal. But real change is not measured by a promise. It's measured by consistent behavior over time. So here's the question I want you to sit with. If nothing changed over the next 5 years, if the patterns stay exactly as they are, would you still choose this marriage? That question can be really painful. And it can also be clarifying, because sometimes the answer reveals that you're not staying because the relationship is healthy now. You're staying because you're hoping it will become healthy later. And that's a very different thing. Another reason people stay is because they're afraid of making the wrong decision. The fear is incredibly common. It sounds like, what if I leave and regret it? What if I break up my family and realize I made a mistake? What if I'll never be happy again? Those are serious questions, and I don't think they should be dismissed. But I want to offer a reframe. Most people ask only one side of the question. They ask, what if I leave and regret it? But they don't always ask, what if I stay another 5 years and regret that? Both choices carry risk. Staying carries risk, leaving carries risk. Doing nothing is still a decision. And sometimes doing nothing simply means fear made the decision for you. This is connected to something called status quo bias. Our brains often prefer what is familiar, even when the familiar is painful, because familiar requires less uncertainty. The unknown requires imagination. It requires planning. It requires change, and change requires energy. So if you already feel exhausted, the idea of making a major life decision can feel impossible. That doesn't mean you're choosing wrong. It may simply mean you're emotionally and mentally overloaded. This is why I often encourage people to gather information before they pressure themselves to making a final decision. Information doesn't force you to leave. Information doesn't force you to stay. Information simply helps fear become quieter. And fear should never make the decision for you. Before we move to the next reason, I want you to do something. Just mentally keep score. How many of these reasons do you recognize in yourself? 1, 2, all 7? You don't have to tell anyone, just notice. Sometimes noticing is the first honest step. The third reason people stay is because they're afraid of what divorce will do to them financially. And I want to say this clearly, that fear is valid. Divorce changes finances. Income may change, expenses may change, housing may change, retirement plans may change, the home may become a question, debt may become a question, support may become a question. And if you've spent years relying on one household structure, imagining a different one can feel overwhelming. But here's something that I've learned from sitting across from people in this exact moment. Most people are not only afraid of the numbers, they're afraid of not knowing the numbers. The unknown has a way of becoming enormous. Your mind starts filling it in the blanks. I'll never qualify for a home. I'll lose everything. I'll have to start over completely. I won't be able to support myself. No one will help me figure this out. Sometimes the financial picture is challenging. I'm not here to sugarcoat that. And fear without information almost always feels worse than facts. Facts may be difficult, but facts give you something to work with. Fear just spins out. This is one of the reasons I believe so strongly in getting clear before settlement decisions are made. You don't want to negotiate your future around assumptions. You want to understand what's actually possible. Can you afford the home? Can you qualify to keep it? Would keeping it make you house poor? Would selling it give you more freedom? Would a different housing option create more stability? These are not just mortgage questions, they're life questions. And when people begin to understand their real options, they often feel less trapped. Even if the answer isn't the one they'd hoped for, there is power in knowing. Clarity does not always give you the easiest path, but it gives you a path you can evaluate. And that is very different from staying because the unknown feels too frightening to face. The fourth reason people stay is because of the kids. And this may be the most emotionally complicated one. Every loving parent wants to protect their children. It's natural to think, if I can just hold the family together a little longer, if I can get them through high school, if it can wait until college, if I can absorb the pain, maybe they won't have to. Those thoughts come from love. They come from sacrifice. They come from wanting your children to feel safe. So I want you to be very careful here. I'm not saying that divorce is automatically better for children. And I'm not saying that staying is automatically better for children. The research on children in divorce, it's much more nuanced than that. Children tend to be affected not simply by whether their parents are married or divorced, but by the level of conflict, stability, emotional safety, and parenting they experience. In other words, the question is not only, will divorce hurt my children? The question is also, what are my children learning from the relationship they are watching every day? Children learn more from what we live than what we lecture. They learn what respect looks like. They learn what conflict looks like. They learn whether people apologize. They learn whether affection is present. They learn whether silence is safety or punishment. They learn what love requires. They learn what one person is allowed to tolerate. And sometimes the hardest part for a parent is realizing that children may already know more than we think they do. They may not know the details, but they often feel the tension. They sense the distance. They notice the coldness. They hear the silence. Again, that does not mean that you should leave. It means the question deserves more depth than simply, should I stay for the kids? A better question may be, what kind of emotional environment am I helping create for my children, and what would make that environment healthier? That answer may look different for different families, but it's a question worth asking honestly. The fifth reason people stay is because they're afraid of being alone. This fear deserves compassion, especially after a long marriage. Your routines are shared, your holidays are shared, your friendships may be shared, your finances may be shared, your home is shared. Sometimes your very identity has become wrapped around the marriage. So when someone casually says, don't be afraid to be alone, I don't want you to think that's helpful. Because the fear can be real. And there is one sentence I've heard many times that always stays with me. I was alone long before I was ever alone. That sentence really matters because loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. You can be sitting next to someone and feel invisible. You can be married and feel emotionally abandoned. You can share a home and still feel like no one really sees you. And you can be physically alone and eventually feel peaceful. This is not about pretending being alone is easy. It may not be. There may be grief. There may be quiet. There may be an adjustment period that feels really uncomfortable. And if fear of being alone is the reason you're staying, I want you to gently ask, am I afraid of being alone? Or am I afraid of discovering that I've already been lonely for a very long time? That's a really hard question, but it can be a very honest one. And again, fear should never make the decision for you. The sixth reason people stay is because they've invested so much already. Years, memories, children, homes, holidays, family traditions, shared friends, dreams you once built together. It's natural to look at all that and think, how could I possibly walk away from all this time? What would it say about my life if the marriage ends? This is where another psychological concept can be helpful. It's called the sunk cost effect. It describes the tendency to continue investing in something because we've already invested so much. We do this in small ways all the time. We finish a bad movie because we've already watched an hour. We keep clothes we never wear because they were expensive. We stay in a job too long because we've already given it 10 years. And sometimes people stay in relationships because leaving would force them to grieve not only the future, but also the meaning of the past. But here's what I want you to remember. Ending something does not erase what it meant. Those years are not wasted because they taught you something. Those years are not wasted because they gave you children. Those years are not wasted because they were good moments. Those years are not wasted because you grew through them. A chapter can matter deeply and still not be the chapter you're meant to keep living forever. So instead of asking only, how much have I already invested? Try asking, if I met this relationship for the first time today, knowing what I know now, would I choose it again? That question is not meant to be cruel. It's meant to bring you back to the present, because your future should not be decided only by what the past has cost you. The seventh reason people stay is because they've started questioning themselves. And this is the one I want you to pay close attention to. Because when someone has lived in uncertainty for a long time, they start asking, am I overreacting? Are my expectations too high? Maybe this is just normal. Maybe I'm the difficult one. Maybe if I were more patient, things would be different. Self-reflection is really healthy. Every relationship requires humility, but self-doubt that keeps you frozen is different. If you constantly need to convince yourself that what you're experiencing is acceptable, if you repeatedly minimize your own feelings, if you keep waiting for someone else to confirm that your pain is legitimate, then it may be time to ask why you no longer trust your own experience. Sometimes clarity doesn't come from having all the answers. Sometimes clarity comes from asking better questions. Sometimes it comes from writing things down. Sometimes it comes from talking to a therapist. Sometimes it comes from speaking with an attorney so you understand the legal process. Sometimes it comes from speaking with a financial or housing professional so you understand what life could look like practically. Sometimes it comes from trusting a friend who helps you hear your own words more clearly. You don't have to make this decision in isolation, and you don't have to rush it. But you also don't have to remain stuck forever because confusion has become familiar. If you made it this far in the video, I want you to take a deep breath, because these are really heavy questions. And if several of these reasons felt personal, that doesn't automatically mean you should leave. It means something in you is asking for attention, and that deserves your honesty. So let's bring this together. People stay for many reasons: hope, fear, children, money, loneliness, history, self-doubt. None of those reasons automatically make staying wrong. And none of them automatically make leaving right. But they do deserve to be examined, because there is a difference between making a thoughtful decision to stay and staying because fear made the decision for you. There is a difference between choosing to rebuild and avoiding the truth. There is a difference between patience and postponing your life because you don't know what else is possible. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's video, it's this. You do not have to decide everything today, but you do deserve clarity. You deserve to understand your options. You deserve to know what's real and what is fear. You deserve support from qualified professionals who can help you think clearly. And whatever you decide, I hope you don't make that decision because fear made it for you. I hope you make it because you understood your options, because clarity changes everything. And sometimes the most important decision isn't whether to stay or whether to leave. It's deciding that you deserve enough clarity to make that choice with confidence. If today's conversation helped you, I'd love to have you join me here each week. My goal is to help you navigate divorce, housing, and major life decisions with more clarity, confidence, and practical guidance. And if you're wondering what your housing and financial options could look like, I've created a free divorce housing clarity quiz. It's a simple place to begin thinking through some of the questions that can make the season feel so overwhelming. You'll find the link in the description below. If this video helped you, please subscribe. And if you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which of these 7 reasons resonated the most with you? You don't have to share your whole story. Even one word is enough. Thank you so much for trusting me with your time today. I'll see you in the next video.